All right, buckle up, everyone, because this deep dive is blasting us straight to Mars. We're doing a deep dive into the Martian, and the collection of sources you all sent in is incredible. Articles, essays, even an interview with Andy Weir himself.
It's really remarkable how The Martian has resonated with so many people, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. So we're going to dig into what makes it more than just your typical sci-fi thriller.
What's really fascinating, at least for me, is how the book balances this really intense survival story with like a genuine celebration of human ingenuity.
Yeah.
It's this story where science isn't just some background element, it's like the main character's toolkit.
It's true. It never feels like a boring science lecture. And
Mm.
speaking of characters, we have to talk about Mark Watney. I mean, he's not exactly your typical astronaut, right?
Oh, definitely not.
The guy's a botanist engineer who's cracking jokes while staring death in the face on this, desolate planet. What do you make of him?
Well, it's honestly a brilliant move by Weir. Think about it. Watney's dealing with this unimaginable isolation,
Right.
this fear. He's completely stranded on Mars, thousands of miles from any other human being, and with very limited supplies. The urge to just give up, I mean, it'll be overwhelming for anyone.
Oh, for sure.
But his humor, that sort of dark wit he has, it becomes this survival mechanism. It's how he grapples with the situation and keeps his spirits up.
It's that thing where when things are really bad, sometimes you just gotta laugh. And we see glimpses of his struggle, too. That scene where he's debating whether to use the morphine. That one always gets me.
Yeah.
It's dark, but it shows how vulnerable he is beneath those jokes.
Exactly. He's not this superhuman action hero. He's flawed. He has doubts and he battles with despair, just like the rest of us. But, and this is crucial, he never lets it completely paralyze him.
Yeah.
And that's what makes that problem-solving mind, combined with that, relentless sense of humor, so relatable, even inspiring.
He chooses to fight. He really embodies that whole when life gives you lemons, make lemonade idea. Except in this case, it's more like if life strands you on Mars, use your botany skills to grow potatoes.
Exactly.
Which, by the way, is a detail we figured out years before the Curiosity rover confirmed there was actually water on Mars.
It's incredible.
Talk about dedication to scientific accuracy.
It's astonishing. He didn't just imagine a good story. He really dug into the science to make it believable. And while he does take some creative liberties, like that initial sandstorm that strands Watney.
Ah, yes. The dust storm. That's the one thing that made me go, how realistic is that?
Yeah.
Because in reality, isn't Mars's atmosphere too thin to actually create winds strong enough to cause that much damage?
You're exactly right. And Weir himself has even admitted that. It was a deliberate choice, a dramatic event to really kick off the story.
Okay, so he bent the laws of physics a bit for that.
A little bit.
I can get behind that. It did make for a very exciting opening scene, but it does make you wonder what other creative choices he made for the sake of the story.
Well, one that often gets overlooked is the whole danger of radiation.
Oh, right.
Think about the amount Watney's exposed to on Mars without the protection of Earth's atmosphere. It would be incredibly dangerous, probably even fatal in the long run.
That's a scary thought, and you're right, he doesn't really dwell on it too much in the book.
He mentions radiation shielding.
Yeah.
But the long-term health risks are kind of pushed aside.
Right.
And I get it. I mean, who wants to read a story about the grim realities of, radiation poisoning? It wouldn't exactly be a hopeful or uplifting story.
True. And that sense of hope is a big part of what makes The Martian so powerful. It's not just about one man's fight to survive. It's about humanity coming together to bring him home.
Yes.
But more on that later. You're absolutely right. That sense of hope, that global collaboration, it's really something.
It really is.
But before we get to that, there are a few more technical details I'm curious about.
Oh, sure.
We've talked about the water extraction and that, well, let's call it a flexible approach to the Martian atmosphere. What other details struck you in terms of the science?
One thing that always stands out is how Weir describes the Martian landscape.
Oh, yeah.
The way Watney experiences the terrain, the dust, just the sheer scale of it, it's incredibly vivid, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. You really feel like you're right there with him, bumping along in that rover.
And from what we know from the rover images and data, it seems like Weir really nailed it.
Mm-hmm.
He captures that desolate beauty, that alien vastness in a way that few authors can.
It's true. And he makes those descriptions so captivating and never feels like you're reading a dry geography textbook.
Right.
And speaking of the rover, there's that scene where it flips over in Arabia Terra.
Oh, man.
Talk about a close call.
Yeah, that one had me on the edge of my seat.
For those who might not remember, Arabia Terra is this large, elevated region on Mars known for having some pretty rough terrain.
Right, lots of craters and cliffs.
So, did Weir base that rollover scene on any actual rover incidents?
Not really.
Okay.
While rovers have definitely had their fair share of challenges on Mars, nothing quite as dramatic as a complete flip. But again, it shows Weir's skill at blending realism with, fictional drama.
Yeah.
He had to raise the stakes somehow, and that scene definitely did the trick.
And it really highlighted Watney's ability to think clearly under pressure.
Absolutely.
I mean, if my only way home just flipped upside down on an alien planet, I don't think I could stay as calm as he did.
He takes a breath, figures out the problem, and just says, work the problem.
Work the problem. Love that.
And that's exactly what he does, with duct tape, a whole lot of ingenuity, and of course, his signature dark humor.
Classic Watney. That scene always makes me think about just how many things could go wrong on a mission like that.
Oh, absolutely. It's terrifying to even think about.
And one thing Weir didn't shy away from was the possibility of a HAB breach.
Oh, right. The HAB. That's Watney's only protection against the Martian elements, his fragile little shelter.
Exactly. And that breach, caused by that faulty seal, it's a terrifying reminder of how even the tiniest malfunction could be catastrophic in space.
It really emphasizes how delicate the balance is between life and death in that kind of environment.
Definitely. And, it's a real testament to Weir's research and attention to detail that even NASA uses the Martian as a training tool now.
Wow, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. They recognize how accurately he portrays the realities of space exploration.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
But as you said earlier, the book is so much more than just a technical manual dressed up as a novel.
Right.
It's the human element that makes it truly special.
Exactly.
The moments of humor, the camaraderie between Watney and his crewmates, even when they're millions of miles apart, those are the things that really resonate.
Absolutely. It's that perfect blend of scientific accuracy and genuine human emotion that makes The Martian so compelling. And it reminds us that even in those extraordinary circumstances, even when you're stranded on a distant planet, it's our human connections, our refusal to give up hope, that really sees us through.
I completely agree.
And that brings us to what might be the most inspiring part of the whole story, the global response to Watney's situation. It really is amazing to think about. People from all over the world, governments, everyday people, all coming together to try and rescue one stranded astronaut.
It's pretty remarkable.
Speaks to something, that human desire to help each other when things are really tough.
It does. There's something about seeing someone, anyone, facing those impossible odds, fighting for their life so far from home that we connect with on a deep level.
Yeah.
It makes you realize that in a lot of ways, the things that divide us aren't that important after all.
It transcends borders, ideologies, all of that. And it's not just about the emotional response either. The book shows the very real collaboration between all these different space agencies. NASA bending the rules, working with the China National Space Administration, all these different countries.
Coming together.
To pool resources and expertise.
And of course, who could forget the Rich Purnell maneuver?
Oh, yeah.
That incredibly daring, risky plan to use Earth's gravity to slingshot the Hermes spacecraft back to Mars.
It's such a great moment in the book.
And it's not just a clever plot device either. It represents that audacity, that out-of-the-box thinking that often comes up when we face a crisis.
It reminds me of that time with Apollo 13 when they had to invent that makeshift carbon dioxide scrubber.
Right.
Using only the materials they had on board.
Talk about thinking on your feet.
Seriously. In both cases, that willingness to push the limits, to go beyond what anyone thought was possible, that's what led to a solution.
Exactly. And it wasn't just the scientists and engineers back in mission control. Watney's own crewmates, the Ares 3 crew, they make the incredibly courageous decision to risk their lives to go back for him.
Wow.
Even when NASA was hesitant.
Yeah.
It's a powerful testament to human connection, the bonds that are formed in the face of danger.
It's funny, when you think about it, science fiction is often seen as this genre about the future, about technology, alien encounters, all of that. But The Martian, at its heart, it's a story about what makes us human.
It is. Our resilience ingenuity,
Yeah.
our capacity for empathy and connection, that's what shines through.
It's what makes it such a hopeful and inspiring story. Even when things seem impossible, even when you're stranded on a planet millions of miles away, the human spirit can prevail.
Especially with a little humor along the way.
Right. Especially with a little humor. Well said. So, to everyone listening who loved The Martian as much as we do, here's something to think about. If you were in Watney's shoes, what everyday resourcefulness would you tap into? What item, something maybe you take for granted now, would become your lifeline on Mars? This book really challenges us to embrace that ingenuity that's inside all of us and remember that we're all capable of much more than we think. This has been a fascinating deep dive into The Martian, exploring not just the science and the thrills, but also the heart of what connects us all as human beings. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and never lose that sense of wonder.